I'm Sandy Mackey.
And I'm Al Curtis.
And this
obstinate boy over here.
Hi, Bob. Wave to the people, Bob. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Wait. Nice to meet you.
He says I can. I'm leaning on my
Oh,
foot.
there.
Leaning on the paw.
Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you. So, top 10 tips for swimming and having a successful pool season with golden retrievers and other types of dogs that enjoy the swimming pools. So one of the questions that we get is, here Bob, you want to come down? You look very awkward. You look awkward. Okay.
Good boy, Bob.
So people ask all the time, is it safe for my dog to swim in my vinyl liner swimming pool?
Well, let's just not even say vinyl. Let's just say in the swimming pool.
Okay.
Let's start with that because vinyl is a special case, but really no different. So, is it safe for a dog to swim? Yes, it's safe. With a few howevers, things to pay attention to. I think number one would be dog swimming in a pool. Yes, a dog in a pool is equivalent to 50 people swimming in the pool. Once a dog goes in, so that's like that number alone, and that number has even grown over the years. It used to be 50, now they're talking that the chemical requirement and from the dander and that on the dog is equivalent to a lot of people swimming in a pool. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that from a water chemistry standpoint, what do I do?
So question one, is it safe? Yes. Question two,
What do I do about it?
what do I do when my dog is swimming in my pool? And one is pay attention to, or we cannot do this in a list format
We
because
can't.
we'll never keep it straight.
No.
So
Yeah, there's two different. All right, let's just talk two different ways though. Let's talk about the dog and let's talk about the pool. That's two separate things. Is it safe for a dog to swim? Yes.
okay.
So that's one for the dog. For the dog.
So on that note, if you have a pool and your dog is swimming, good advice would be train them where you want them to get in and out of the pool. Meaning, if you have a vinyl liner pool and they jump in or go in on the steps, then they should know where the steps are to get out. Be careful though. If you train the dog how to get in and out of the pool when they're a puppy, and then they're trying to compete with an older dog, perhaps their mother, to get the tennis ball first, and they don't know that they can jump off the side, then you'll have to retrain them on how to do that. But that can come later.
Let's not worry about them getting in. Always train them how to get out. How about that?
How to get out of.
Because eventually they'll grow up to maybe wanting to jump. Some never will, but some absolutely
Right.
will. But once in the water, always train your dog and bring them back to the steps.
Right.
That way, you won't have an issue if it's a vinyl liner pool of them scratching the side. Or if it's a fiberglass pool and scratching the gel coat. We kind of play this off like, oh, nothing can go wrong. No, a dog can easily scratch your gel coat and damage the surface of a fiberglass pool as well. And on a gunite pool, sure, they're more durable in terms of that. But they could still damage themselves and they could damage tile, surfaces of pools. So always get them to the step. And don't let them clamber along any edge of the wall other than at the step.
Right.
Or a sun shelf. You could train them equally to swim right onto a sun shelf.
So a bit of advice on that as well is some people say that their animals never go in the pool. Some dogs don't like to swim. It's probably still important at least one time to make them kind of swim or get them in there so they know how to get out. You know, there's cases I know where our puppies have just played next to the pool and one of them like pushes or they kind of don't know where they are and one goes in. So what if that happens? Even if your dog doesn't like to swim, make sure that they know like how they can get themselves out if they get in.
And that probably takes a couple times in and out, but to get them to know.
Yeah.
So that a dog doesn't get put in a stressful situation and panic, which they can. But if we've given them a little bit of training, so that's really good advice.
Well, in addition to my golden retrievers, I have a couple of Shih Tzus. They don't like to swim. Yet, if we take them in to swim, like occasionally they're just really dirty and we want to make the pool really dirty or something like that, I don't know. So we'll take them in for a swim. They immediately beeline for the steps, so they do know exactly where to get out.
Because you've had them in and out a few
Right.
times. Yeah. Well, even a really, really, really dirty Shih Tzu in a pool is about like the tail of one of your very clean Goldens probably. So I can't imagine that they carry that much dirt of any kind that would be significant because they're about the size of a tail of a golden.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So another bit of advice with animals and a pool, even if it's an animal that doesn't necessarily like the pool, is supervise them when they are outside. Because a dog who is playing and falls in, their instincts should kick in, but what if they don't? You want
There's
to
the
be
panic,
able
yeah.
to keep an eye on, any live creature that is around your pool. It would be important for you to know what's going on.
I think another thing too is we get into the pool environment and there's always play, especially when the dog's interacting with the pool. One thing that I've noticed, and it happens quite often with our dogs, because like you, I also have many golden retrievers at my home in my swimming pool, is when a dog is running around a pool, it's the same thing that we teach our kids about don't run around the pool. You can't stop the dog from running necessarily, but pay attention to their paws. Because running, slippery, wet surface, rough, how many times have we gotten nails torn, pads torn, and a dog won't normally complain about it, but watch for it because, again, now you're putting them in an environment that potentially could cause some challenge. So always be cautious and aware that a dog running around on concrete anyway, they always run that risk of wearing out their pads, and so just watch that, and if it happens, then treat it like you would treat any other wound. Make sure you take care of it instead of just assuming that the dog's going to let you know if there's a problem. It typically won't in a case like that. So watch for it and just make sure that they're safe.
Mm-hmm. So another word of advice when you have dogs swimming is, because they introduce so much more to the pool water, that it's like 50 to 80 people swimming, you'll need more chemicals. So your filtration will need to be on longer, the amount of chemicals you go through will be more significant. And a funny story, we know this because we built a pool, and one summer the homeowner said, I'm just having trouble keeping any chlorine in the pool, it keeps getting cloudy. And we went through a bunch of troubleshooting steps, and then we finally said, well, what about the dog? How often is the dog in the pool? And they were saying, well, the dog is in the pool like once a week, or if we're outside, and it hasn't been lately. And then they went to the footage on their camera where the dog was going for a swim every time the dog was outside and nobody was looking. So it was definitely adding a lot of
It's hard
dog
to keep the pool clean.
to the pool. So you'll need a lot more chemicals, yet your dog isn't going to know when you just dose the pool with all those chemicals. So just like it's not necessarily a good idea for us to jump in a pool as a human right after we've added, say, a case of liquid chlorine, definitely your dog should not be jumping in at that point either.
If they do, though, the advice would be, if your dog is swimming in that environment, hose them off. Because again, we can rinse ourselves off really quickly and see when their skin is being affected, but it's under the hair, we're not going to see it as well. So always make a point, if you know that the chemistry is off or the chemicals are high in the pool, rinse the dog off when they're done. Because if it's under normal circumstances, I don't think it'd be. We don't, and I don't imagine you. Do you rinse the dogs off? No. But if you know that you had just shocked the pool and the dog was swimming, you're likely to, because it's going to affect their skin. It's likely to affect. I'm not saying it will. It's likely to, though. Mm-hmm. As much as their fur keeps them dry, and their skin's not technically supposed to get very wet, I imagine that there's moisture that gets in the face and the mouth
and their eyes and things like that. So, and on that note too, with any dog or human that's swimming, I know sometimes you can get kind of that swimmer's ear, you can get water trapped in that. The dogs can as well. They do have ears that are, especially if you have a golden retriever, they're, kind of naturally inclined to be jumping into the water. So their ears kind of do their thing to mitigate the water as best they can. But you'll want to check that, because sometimes, of all the dogs that have been swimming with me so far this summer, one has kind of a recurring sensitivity to either getting water or something in his ears. So I check them now periodically and treat them if I need to. And then I peek at the other dog's ears as well, which none of the others have needed anything.
Well, Grandma, the grandmother of all of these dogs and the mother of some of these dogs, does have ear problems. But the difference is she never walks into the pool. Hers is as far as she could possibly jump, land, go underwater. So her ears are up. once she hits the water, because she literally oftentimes disappears under the water. So we're constantly, and you can see she's constantly shaking her head because the water gets in there, but naturally the ears aren't doing what they're supposed to do in that case, because when she hits the water, she's traveling, 30 miles an hour through the air. But that's her entry, that's her style. She's really aggressive when it comes to playing in the water. And so she does tend to have more, but that's not normal probably. Most dogs don't operate that way. But she does get stinky ear pretty quick, pretty often. All the time, probably, seems like. I had her swimming the other day, and in the water she would be shaking her head and leaning to one side, so you could tell it was really bothering her. Whether it's just water in her ear, or if it's, infection, or, because you can get all kinds of different stuff. We feel it in our heads, so we can, hop on one side or lay on her side and try to drain it. I don't know that they know quite that same technique. What else about a pet in the pool?
Pet in a pool, especially if they're a hairy pet, in addition to your water chemistry, you need to clean out your skimmer baskets, and you need to clean the bottom of your pool, especially like your main drain, because it's doing what it's supposed to. It's pulling the water out through that. Anything that is too large to get through the drain will not make it. So you'll have kind of clumps of hair and the main drains at the bottom of the pool, which could be a little more difficult to vacuum off as well. So if you do have to vacuum those and you're not quite getting enough suction, you may want to close the main drains a little bit just while you're getting that part, so that you can draw it through the skimmer. On the same token, you'll have to look in your pump basket a lot more frequently, make sure that's staying clean, and then depending on the type of filter you have, some will be a little bit easier to maintain with a dog, or dogs swimming in the pool, and some would be a little more difficult. So if you have a cartridge filter, you'll want to take it out and rinse it often. I know the advice in the cartridge filter advocate world is you only clean them once a season, at the beginning of the year, then you'll clean them at the end of the year, or if you experience an issue. If you have a lot of yard debris, leaves and dust and dirt and animals, then you'll probably want to once a week or every other week
at least,
make sure that you're cleaning those, and you'll probably diminish the lifetime of those. DE filters, I can imagine, I don't know of any DE filter pools that we take care of that have animals swimming on a regular basis, but just the amount of hair and stuff that they introduce, I know that the backwashing and the cleaning of those DE grids would be a lot more often. And then with a sand filter, same thing. You'll need to backwash probably quite a bit more than you would without dogs in the pool. And then there's even more with a sand filter.
Yeah, I think that's what we see a lot of, is hair, especially in volume, creates a woven mat. And you literally can plug up a filter really quick. But what most people don't realize is most of the hair doesn't trap on the surface. Human hair especially makes it a couple inches, 3-4 inches into the sand bed, and then locks up there. And you'll end up with a layer that's underneath, which is making your filter very inefficient. Dog hair the same way. And as much as it's no fun taking a filter apart, I would recommend once or twice a year taking the top of the filter off. Of course, this is when it's shut off and you're not using it, but taking it off and scraping several inches of sand out of there and replacing it, because you'll get all kinds of layers of hair. And I know we have 4 Goldens that swim in our pool, and sure, you get the hair on the surface of the pool. If it's there long enough and it hasn't filtered out, it goes to the bottom and we get these massive clumps. Well, some of that gets through. The big long hairs don't get through, but those little hairs, they get through the skimmer basket, through the main drain, through the pump basket, into the filter, and then not only into the filter, but then down several inches into the filter. Now, if it was just a little bit hair every once in a while, maybe not so much of a big deal. But if you're swimming, if the dogs are swimming a lot, which ours tend to swim, and it's been really, when it's really warm, we certainly want them to swim more. We swim more because to stay cool. that's a lot of hair that's getting through. We're catching a lot of it in big clumps on the main drain and in the bottom of the pool and in the skimmer and in the pump basket, but I know there's a lot going through. And when that gets through, much like if you have a lot of cottonwoods and you got that cottonwood snow in the spring, that stuff's the same thing. You catch a lot of it, but the stuff that gets through gets down into that sand level. And then if you have a lot of humans with long hair, the long fine hair works its way into a filter as well. And all of those things, you add that up, and real quickly, you're not getting circulation and you're not getting filtration. And the net result is you're going to have a dirty pool that you're constantly fighting. And an easy solution is to scrape that surface of sand off. You always want to replace it though. If you take this much sand out of your filter, you always want to put that much sand back in your filter. You don't want to fill it all the way up. A filter is never full of sand, a sand filter. It's 60 to 80% full, 60 to 70% full typically. And on most filters, there'll be an amount of sand that's required. But if you're scraping 2 inches off, make a mental note of how much you took out and put that much back in each time.
Yeah. So toys in the pool. If you're playing with dogs in the pool or if you're playing with humans in the pool, you may have pool toys. So you'll want to also make sure if you're using some type of a pool cleaner that you don't have them staying on the bottom of the pool because the pool cleaner could get stuck. It could wear, if it's stuck in one spot and has something spinning on it, then it could definitely cause an issue. You don't want those toys going through your skimmer and plugging it up or anything like that. Just what I've noticed in swimming with the dogs is tennis balls are something they usually float on the surface of the water if you throw them in until, of course, the dogs put a hole in it and then they sink to the bottom. But the dogs or the puppies were having to keep their mouth open more, so I know that they were swallowing more water because they were coughing. So we've been playing with little ducks. So my advice, if you have golden retrievers, buy the
Small
squishy
toys
little
versus big toys.
floaty toy ducks, so when they go get it, they can actually close their mouth, which I like, because then they're not trying to
Inhale so
keep
much
that
water.
water out of it. So that's just a fun sandy fact.
Well, and I also think it's good when you're done swimming is to take all the toys out. Because much like a child, that's an attractant for the dog to go back to and may try to get. And that's one of the things we always recommend with kids as well, especially small children, is don't leave the floaty floating in the pool. Don't leave the thing that's going to attract them back there. Take everything out. Take that 30 seconds that it takes to retrieve the toys, get them out of the pool. Less likely for anything to happen. Same thing for a dog, is you don't want a dog to wander and happen to see it, get excited and fall in and then panic. It can happen.
Well, one more piece of advice too is with the pool cleaners. If you have a pool cleaner, don't have people or pets swimming when the pool cleaner is in your pool. So maybe they would mostly ignore it. But if they're swimming and they get caught in it or they can't figure out how to get around it, then it's a problem. And they often have cords.
You can see that. You can see a dog get disoriented, and there's a little fear that you almost see in them. Which let's talk then a little bit also about swimming with a pet, because there's a bunch of different, at least guidelines that I would use. Because when you're swimming with a big dog, they have these little teeny tiny paws that are moving, that are keeping their body afloat, and you can't expect them, as they're coming toward you, to not continue that motion. And so we always have scratches, we always whatever, and that's a part of the game. But learn how to maneuver that, learn how to manage that. Never let a dog swim up behind someone else. Yeah, that happens oftentimes too, is kids are playing and the dog's in the pool and they swim up behind them, and there's not much worse than a big swipe across the back, because the dog's just trying to
climb up onto the back,
Mhm.
because then they can stop swimming.
Mhm. So learn
or on each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So learn to sort of maneuver around them and grab them on the stomach, grab them on the chest to help them.
Pay attention to how the dog is in the water,
Mhm.
or look for their signs as well. If I'm holding a toy and Bob wants the toy, if Bob's in the proximity, sometimes he'll just take that flying leap to come get the toy without necessarily thinking through that I'm standing right there. So you've got to be very aware.
He's focused on the toy, not on your safety,
right.
And he doesn't realize what damage can be caused, or
a child,
child, or you're teasing two dogs with the same toy. One can easily push the other one under, and we see that kind of panic happens. Mostly, they can kind of right themselves.
Yeah.
Although there's times where, and I know you've seen this, that a dog could be swimming and something like that happens, distracting, and they start smacking the water, and now the water's splashing them in the face, and they go into this kind of panic mode. They don't go back into their normal swim mode.
Mhm.
Now it's a slapping motion, like a panic, and that's number one. It's still stressful on the dog, and stressful on the human for that matter. It's stressful doesn't mean that they're not going to be safe. But why put the dog through stress if they don't have to be in stress?
Well, as I've watched that happen a couple times, I've thought that is an analogy for life, because if you're panicking in one place, you can't go anywhere. But if they get that forward motion going again, they're
Then they're all
absolutely fine. So
Mhm.
life advice too is you've got to keep the forward motion going, because then kind of everything rights itself.
Yeah, the panic you can get through because you're moving, and then you can continue on.
Yeah.
It's good life advice. But there's all those little things that people often don't think about with a dog, big or small. I mean, obviously it's is that exasperated or made larger, whatever.
Exasperated?
No, not exasperated.
Exasperate?
Yeah, there's
exacerbated?
yes, that one. You know, it becomes larger when the dog is bigger.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more. If you have a 2-pound dog swimming in the pool, the likelihood of it hurting you by swimming up behind you and scratching is kind of
Much,
small.
much less.
You know, it's got legs this long, where when you've got these big sweeping motions, and that causes panic in people, that causes fear in people, because pain is no fun. And, you know, so that you've got all those things happening, and we encourage that you let the dog swim. We're advocates of that. We want to make sure that the dog is having as pleasing of a time as a human being is having a pleasing time. So we don't want there to be strife, and we don't want the dog to be punished because it was just doing dog stuff, and next thing you know, it scratched its homeowner, and the homeowner didn't realize it would. Well, you know, it's not the dog's fault. We're not saying the dog's perfect every time, but the dog's just doing dog stuff. It's just having fun. It's just its whole existence is about enjoying the experience that it's having. It doesn't know not to, most often.
Right. Until you tell it.
Until you teach it a certain way.
Well, on that note, that's all of our best tips that we can think of right now.
However many that was, because
For
there's probably some more, but yes.
Swimming with your dog, especially your golden retriever.
And we love
Or
swimming
golden
with our golden
retrievers.
retrievers, and we would highly recommend it.